The city lights blurred into golden streaks as the rain fell, slow, heavy, deliberate. Somewhere beneath those streetlights, a small figure ran barefoot through puddles, clutching a soaked sketchbook to his chest. His name was Liam. His breath came in clouds of white, his thin jacket clinging to his trembling frame. Across the street, behind tall iron gates and polished marble walls, the world looked entirely different. Chandeliers, laughter, and the faint notes of a piano bled through the open window of the Beaumont mansion, the home of a millionaire whose daughter hadn't seen the sun in years. Inside, Ava Beaumont sat by that very window, 17, blind since birth. Her hands traced the rain's rhythm on the glass as if trying to imagine its dance. The doctor said she had 2 months left. Her body was failing faster than anyone expected. But she didn't know that part yet. Only her father did, and the secret was breaking him. The storm outside and the stillness within seemed like two worlds that would never meet. Yet fate, as always, had other plans before we dive deeper. Tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. It started the next morning, quiet and pale. The mansion's gardener had quit, and a replacement was needed quickly. That's how Liam, 16, poor, desperate for work, found himself standing at those iron gates, his clothes still damp from the night before. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was too young. But hunger doesn't wait for permission. Name? The guard grunted. Liam Carter, sir. I can work hard. I don't need much pay. He was about to be turned away when a soft voice interrupted. Let him in. Ava's nurse, Grace, appeared by the doorway. Something in the boy's trembling tone reminded her of a time long ago when she'd been young and scared too. So Liam got the job. He trimmed roses, swept paths, and polished windows, always silent, always watchful. The mansion felt like another planet to him. Still, every day he saw the same silhouette by the window, the girl who never stepped outside. Her fingers moved gracefully across a piano's keys, each note floating through the halls like a ghost of something beautiful that used to be alive. One afternoon, as he carried tools past the open music room, she spoke without turning her head. Who's there? Liam froze. Sorry, miss. I didn't mean to disturb. You didn't. I just wanted to know what the rain sounds like today. He hesitated. Then softly he said, It sounds like tiny footsteps racing each other down the roof, like they're playing before they disappear. Ava smiled faintly. No one's ever described it like that before. That was the first time she laughed in weeks. From that day on, he'd pause outside her door and tell her stories about colors, clouds, and the smell of wet earth. For someone who couldn't see, she saw more than most. And for someone who had nothing, he gave her everything he could. His words. Grace noticed the change. The doctors had said her heart would grow weaker, but instead, Ava's cheeks began to flush again. Hope flickered where medicine had failed. One evening, when the power went out during another storm, Ava asked him, What color is thunder? Liam thought for a moment. Dark purple, I think. The kind that feels heavy in your chest before it breaks into silver. Ava laughed softly. Then I like purple best. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit, like to prove that compassion still matters. Days turned into weeks. Liam became more than a worker. He was her storyteller, her only window to the world she'd never seen. Yet every story he told was painted with his own hunger, his own missing pieces. He lived alone in a small shelter, saving every penny to buy food and medicine for his younger brother, Jamie, who had been sick since birth. He never told Ava about that. How could he? She already had her own pain. One afternoon, Ava asked, What does your home look like? He lied gently. Small but warm. There's always sunlight on the wall near my bed, she smiled, imagining it. I wish I could see that sunlight once. Just once, Liam didn't answer. He couldn't tell her that his room had no window. That night, he returned home to find Jamie's fever worse. The medicine cost more than his week's pay. He stared at the few coins he had, then at the drawing Jamie had made of the sun. Something inside him broke. He took out his old sketchbook, the one he carried through the rain that night. It was filled with drawings of a world he'd never get to live in. He tore out the pages and pressed them into Jamie's hands. "You'll see all this one day," he whispered. "I promise." The next morning, he arrived at the mansion late. Grace met him with red eyes. "Ava fainted again," she said softly. "Her heart's getting weaker." He ran to the music room. She was lying on the couch, pale but smiling. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered. "I'm not gone yet." He wanted to believe her. "Tell me a story," she said. Something happy, so he did. About a sky that never stopped raining, and two souls who found color in the storm. And as her breathing steadied, he thought, maybe stories could heal after all. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. The days grew shorter, as if time itself was folding in on them. The mansion began to feel less like a place of wealth and more like a world slowly holding its breath. Ava's piano still echoed through the marble halls, but every note carried a fragile beauty now, like glass about to crack. Liam would pause in the garden just to listen, the sound reaching him through the drizzle and wind. It wasn't just music anymore. It was her heartbeat trying to stay. He didn't know what hurt more, seeing her fade or knowing he couldn't do anything about it. But that changed one evening when he overheard Grace whispering to Dr. Hale near the doorway. "She has 2 months, maybe less," Grace said quietly. "Mr. Beaumont refuses to tell her. He says hope is all she has left." Liam froze in the shadows, the words like stones sinking inside him. 2 months. He looked at his own calloused hands, the dirt under his nails, the shoes splitting at the sides. What could a boy like him give to a girl running out of time? That night he couldn't sleep. The rain was gone, and the world felt painfully still. Jamie's soft breathing filled the silence beside him. Liam turned over the sketchbook again, its last few pages blank. And then as dawn touched the broken window, he began to draw. Not just anything. He drew what he thought Ava deserved to see. The sunrise, every shade she'd never known, every ray she'd never felt. The next morning, he slipped the sketchbook into his bag and hurried to the mansion. Ava was on the balcony, her skin pale against the sunlight she couldn't see. "You sound different today," she said as he approached. "I just didn't sleep much," he admitted, then added, "But I made something for you." She reached out, her hands trembling slightly. He placed the sketchbook in her palms and began describing it. Each line, each color, as if painting through words. "The sky starts as soft gold," he said. "Then the light grows bolder, orange, pink, blue. It's the world waking up and smiling." Ava's lips parted in wonder. "I can almost see it." Her fingers traced the paper, gentle as breath. "You make it sound alive." Liam's throat tightened. "It is alive. It's you." She laughed. That sound again, delicate and full. For a moment, the illness didn't own her. That became their ritual. Every morning, he'd draw something new. A field of lilies, a starry night, a child flying a kite, and describe it in the kind of detail that made her forget she was blind. And in return, she played for him, songs she composed from his drawings. His art became her sight. Her music became his hope. One afternoon, while she played, Mr. Beaumont appeared behind them. His face softened as he watched the two of them, the fragile girl smiling again, the boy with worn hands making her world bright. He didn't interrupt, but when Liam left that evening, he called him over. "You've done something no doctor could," the man said quietly. "You've given her color." Liam lowered his eyes. "I just talked to her, sir." Beaumont hesitated. "You remind me of someone I used to be." "Don't stop doing what you're doing. But remember, love doesn't always end like stories do." Liam didn't understand then. He would. That night, Grace found Ava sitting by the piano long after sunset. "Why are you smiling like that?" she asked. Ava whispered. "Because for the first time I can imagine light. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." A week later, Liam didn't come. Then another day passed, and another. Ava waited by the piano, her fingers resting on the keys that no longer sang. Grace said he might be sick, but Ava's heart felt a different ache, the kind that comes when silence replaces laughter. When he finally returned, his face was pale, his eyes red from sleeplessness. "Where were you?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then forced a smile. "Just had to take care of something." He didn't tell her that Jamie had collapsed 2 nights before, or that he'd spent his week selling half his belongings for medicine. Ava tilted her head. "You sound tired." "I'm okay. Liam." She reached out until her hand found his. "You don't always have to pretend you're fine." He looked at her. This girl who couldn't see him, yet somehow saw right through him. And in that moment, something shifted. He realized she wasn't just the one needing light. Maybe he did, too. "I'll tell you everything one day," he whispered. "Promise?" "Promise." But promises are fragile things, especially when fate listens too closely. The following morning, the mansion was unusually quiet. The scent of lilies filled the hallway, and outside, a soft fog hugged the gardens. Ava sat by the piano again, fingers gliding slowly over the keys, searching for a melody that wouldn't come. Her heart had begun to betray her more often, sudden weakness, fading breath. Still, she waited for Liam, as she did every day. But that day he came late, with trembling hands and eyes that carried storms. "You're shaking," she whispered. "What happened?" He forced a small smile. "Just cold," yet his voice cracked when he said it. He had just come from the clinic, where the doctor told him Jamie's condition was worsening. Without better treatment, his brother wouldn't make it past winter. Liam didn't have the courage to tell Ava, not when she herself was running out of time, so he did what he always did. Turned pain into a story. Today, he said, sitting beside her, the world smelled like cinnamon and rain. The market was loud, people arguing over apples, and a little girl was feeding crumbs to pigeons. She had no shoes, but she laughed like she owned the sky. Ava smiled faintly. "Tell me more," he continued, describing colors she'd never seen. Orange rooftops, green umbrellas, the way the puddles reflected sunlight like pieces of glass. For those few minutes, the ache in his chest loosened. But deep down, he knew he was lying to both of them. After he left, Mr. Beaumont entered quietly. He had overheard part of their conversation. His expression was a strange mix of sorrow and suspicion. "Who is that boy to you?" he asked his daughter gently. Ava smiled. "He's the sound of everything I can't see." Her father looked away. "Be careful, Ava. The world outside this house doesn't forgive easily." She turned toward his voice. "Neither does loneliness, Father." That night, Beaumont called Grace into his study. "Find out everything about him," he said. "Where he comes from. What he wants." Grace hesitated. "He's a good boy, sir." "Good boys still have motives," Beaumont replied, his tone colder than he meant. "My daughter's heart is fragile. I won't let anyone break it." But the truth Grace discovered broke more than one heart. She returned 2 days later, holding a torn paper with Liam's address. "He lives in the old district, sir, in a single-room shelter. He has a sick brother. The boy's been selling sketches to pay for medicine." Beaumont's expression softened slightly, then hardened again. "He's using her kindness," he said quietly. "It always begins with pity." "Sir, I don't think—" "Enough, Grace. Pay him double and let him go." "I won't risk Ava getting hurt." Grace tried to reason, but Beaumont's grief had built walls no one could climb. He'd lost his wife years ago to illness. He couldn't watch his daughter fall in love with death approaching both of them. The next morning, when Liam arrived, the guard stopped him. "You're not needed anymore," the man said, handing him an envelope. Liam froze. "What? Why?" "Orders from Mr. Beaumont. Take your pay and leave." He didn't even have time to say goodbye. That evening, Ava waited at the piano. The clock ticked. The house grew quiet. "He didn't come." "Grace," she asked softly, "did something happen to Liam?" Grace's eyes filled before she could answer. He had to go, sweetheart." Ava's hands trembled over the keys. "No, he promised. He wouldn't just disappear." She sat there all night, waiting for footsteps that never came. And when the sun rose, it wasn't warm anymore. Just light she couldn't see and silence she could. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Days turned into weeks. Ava's condition worsened quickly without the small joy that had kept her heart steady. Grace tried to distract her, flowers, music, visitors, but nothing filled the space he'd left behind. One night she dreamt of his voice describing colors again. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears she didn't remember shedding. Across the city, Liam sat outside the clinic, clutching the same envelope. He'd used the money to buy Jamie's medicine. But he couldn't stop thinking about Ava, her laughter, the way her fingers danced over invisible worlds. Every stroke of his pencil now felt empty. He drew, tore, drew again, until the paper bled with frustration. He didn't know that Ava had collapsed the night before. Or that her father, desperate, had finally told her the truth, that she had 2 months left. When she heard it, she didn't cry. She simply whispered, "I wish I had said goodbye to him." If that moment hit you hard, leave a... Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Winter arrived quietly, dusting the world in silver. The Beaumont mansion looked like a frozen memory. Windows frosted, gardens still. Ava rarely left her bed now. The piano gathered dust in the corner, its silence heavier than any song. Grace sat beside her, reading aloud letters that never came. Sometimes Ava would smile faintly and whisper, "Maybe he'll come when it snows." He said snow makes the world sound soft. Grace would nod, though her heart ached. The doctors had begun to count days now, not weeks. And far away, in the dim shelter across the city, Liam held on to that same snow, watching it fall through the broken roof like bits of lost light. Jamie had gotten a little better. The medicine worked, but the boy's small voice asked questions Liam couldn't answer. "Will we ever have a home, Liam?" "One day," he said quietly. "And will you draw again?" Liam looked at his empty sketchbook. "When I find something worth drawing," but something inside him knew he'd already found it. He'd just lost it. One night, while buying food, he overheard 2 nurses talking outside the pharmacy. "Such a shame about the Beaumont girl," one said. "Barely 17, and they say she won't make Christmas." The world seemed to stop. The bag in his hand fell to the ground. He didn't wait another second. By morning, he was standing at the mansion gates again, snow crunching beneath his torn shoes. The guards recognized him immediately. "You were told to leave." "I know," he said, breathless. "But I need to see her. Please." One guard hesitated. He had seen the boy before, had seen what his presence did to the girl upstairs. But orders were orders. "Go home, kid." "She doesn't need more pain," Liam's voice cracked. "She's dying." "And I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye?" The man looked away. Something in those words, in that trembling voice, broke through. He stepped aside just a little. 5 minutes. "If anyone asks, I didn't see you." Liam nodded, tears already freezing on his cheeks, and ran inside. He found her in the room filled with pale light and soft beeping. She was asleep, her hair like spilled gold across the pillow. Machines hummed quietly beside her bed. For a moment he couldn't move, then her lips parted slightly. "Liam?" Her voice was fragile, like a dream remembering itself. He froze. "Ava?" She smiled faintly. "I knew you'd come when it snowed." He fell to his knees beside her, gripping her hand. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to leave. I know," she whispered. "Father thought he was protecting me." Liam blinked back tears. "You should have told me you were sick," she laughed softly. "And you? You should have told me you were hurting too." They both smiled, the kind that breaks and heals at once. Outside, snow kept falling. Quiet, endless, kind. "Do you still draw?" she asked. He hesitated. "Not since you stopped playing." "Then maybe we should start again," she whispered. "Together." He nodded, pulling from his coat the old pencil he'd kept all along. "What do we draw first?" Ava thought for a moment. "Describe the snow to me. It's white like peace," he said softly. "And it sounds like forgiveness." She smiled, tears tracing her cheeks. "Then draw that." Grace stood silently in the doorway, watching. Even Mr. Beaumont, who had come to scold the boy, stopped in his tracks. For the first time, his daughter's laughter filled the room again. He turned away, guilt heavy on his face. He had kept her safe from pain, but also from joy. And seeing her smile now, frail yet radiant, he realized how wrong he had been. He walked to them quietly. "Liam," he said, voice shaking, "thank you for coming back." Liam looked up, unsure how to respond. Beaumont sighed. "You gave her more life than any doctor ever did. Stay as long as she wants you here. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something close. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." The next few days were small miracles. Ava's strength didn't return, not really, but her spirit did. She and Liam spent hours together, drawing and composing, turning silence into something beautiful again. He'd describe every color, and she'd answer with music, soft notes that filled the room with life. Even the doctors noticed. Her heartbeats grew steadier. Her pain lessened. It was as if hope had become medicine, but time was still moving, and they both knew it. One evening, as the sun sank low, Ava said quietly, "When I go, will you keep drawing?" Liam nodded, his throat tightening. "Always. And when you see the sunrise, think of me, okay?" He swallowed hard. "You'll be in every color." Outside, the snow kept falling, and this time, it sounded like goodbye. The next morning came slow and gray. The mansion slept beneath a soft blanket of snow, and the world outside seemed to whisper secrets only the wind could hear. Inside, Ava's room glowed with the faint light of a candle. Liam had fallen asleep beside her chair, his head resting near her hand. When he stirred awake, Ava was already watching him, or at least facing his direction, her lips curved in a quiet smile. "You stayed," she whispered. "Didn't want to miss the morning," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. "You said sunrises were your favorite," she laughed gently. "You still describe them better than I can imagine them." He looked at her then. Really looked. Her fragile body, the softness of her hair, the faint tremor in her fingers as she reached toward his face. "Liam, can I touch your eyes?" He blinked. "My eyes? I just want to know what colors look like," she said softly. "Through you." He leaned forward, letting her fingertips rest lightly on his face. She traced his lashes, his brow, the curve of his cheek. And when she smiled, it wasn't the smile of someone dying. It was the smile of someone finally alive. "It feels like warmth," she whispered. "Like the first color of morning." Liam's heart twisted. "Ava, don't be sad," she interrupted gently. "Promise me something? Anything? When I'm gone?" "Don't stop drawing. Don't let the dark take what we made." He couldn't answer. His throat burned and his hands shook. All he managed was a nod. She smiled again. "Good, because I think you were meant to bring color to people who can't see it. Like me, that broke him." Silent tears slipped down his face as he held her hand. She reached out, wiping one with her thumb. "Even your tears have color," she murmured. "They sound like silver." He let out a small laugh through the ache. "Then I'll keep them safe." Outside, the wind picked up, shaking frost from the branches. The sound filled the silence between them, the kind of silence that holds more love than words ever could. Then suddenly, the door opened. Mr. Beaumont entered, holding a small envelope. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with something he hadn't spoken yet. "I need to talk to both of you," he said quietly. Liam straightened, sensing the shift in his tone. Ava tilted her head. "Father?" Beaumont sighed, stepping closer. "There's something I should have said long ago." He paused, his voice trembling. "You're not dying, Ava." The room fell silent. The candle flickered as if even the flame couldn't believe what it heard. Liam frowned. "What?" Beaumont swallowed hard. "The diagnosis. It was wrong. The first doctors, he misread the scans. Her heart is weak, yes, but not failing. With proper care, she can live a long life." Ava's lips parted in disbelief. You told me I had 2 months." "I thought it was true," Beaumont said, his voice cracking. When I found out it wasn't, I didn't know how to tell you. I wanted to fix everything first. The treatments, the surgeries. But you let me say goodbye to my life, she whispered. You let me believe it was ending. Beaumont took a step closer. I was afraid, Ava, afraid to hope again. After losing your mother, I couldn't... Hope? She interrupted, her voice breaking. Hope is all I ever had left. Liam stood frozen. Every word hit him like a wave. All this time, every moment they'd shared, every drawing, every tear, built on a lie neither of them had asked for. Ava turned her face away. Please leave, Father. Beaumont hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'll be downstairs. When he left, the silence felt heavier than before. Ava's shoulders trembled. All this time, I thought I was dying, Liam. Every song I played, every word I said, I was saying goodbye. He stepped closer, kneeling beside her. You weren't wrong, he said softly. You were living. Really living. And maybe that's what saved you. She looked toward him, her voice barely a whisper. But how do I forgive him? Liam took her hand gently. Maybe you start by remembering why he lied. Not because he stopped loving you, but because he loved you too much to lose you again. Her lips quivered, but then, slowly, she nodded. You always find color, even in pain. Because you taught me how, he said. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. That night, Ava sat by the window again, listening to the snow. Her father stood quietly behind her, guilt and love written all over his face. She didn't turn around at first. Then she said softly, You can sit, Father. When he did, she reached out and found his hand. Next time, she whispered, just tell me the truth. I'd rather face pain with honesty than peace built on lies. Beaumont's eyes filled. I will. I swear. And for the first time, he held her without fear. Across the room, Liam watched them. Two broken souls learning how to forgive. And for the first time in his life, he believed in miracles that weren't magic. Just human hearts healing in quiet ways. Outside, the snow finally stopped. And the world exhaled. The days that followed felt different. Slower, softer, brighter, somehow. The mansion, once heavy with silence, began to breathe again. The piano was cleaned, the curtains drawn open, and for the first time in months, sunlight poured across the marble floors like a promise being kept. Ava was still weak, but there was color in her cheeks now. The new doctors confirmed it. She could recover with care, patience, and heart. Mr. Beaumont hired the best specialists, but Ava insisted Liam stay too. He's the reason I'm still here, she said. And her father didn't argue this time. Liam returned to his work, not as a gardener, but as Ava's storyteller once more. Every morning, he'd bring her something new. A flower from the garden, a pebble shaped like a heart, a sound he'd recorded from the city. And she'd listen to each one as if it were the most precious gift on earth. But despite the peace that grew between them, there was still one thing Liam hadn't said. One night, as Ava played softly under the dim light, he sat beside her and spoke quietly. I haven't told you everything, he began. She turned toward him, her fingers still moving across the keys. About what? My brother, Jamie, his voice wavered. He's been sick a long time. I almost lost him. The same time I lost you. Ava stopped playing. You never told me. I didn't want to make you sad, he said, his gaze dropping. You had enough pain, she smiled softly. You don't protect someone by hiding the truth. You protect them by letting them carry it with you. He looked up, meeting her eyes, those eyes that couldn't see, yet always seemed to understand more than anyone else. Ava reached for his hand. How is he now? Better. The medicine's helping, but... He hesitated, then added, the doctor says he needs surgery soon. Something we can't afford. Ava thought for a moment, then stood slowly, her hands still holding his. Come with me. She led him down the hallway toward her father's study. Beaumont looked up from his papers as they entered. Father, she said gently, Liam's brother needs help. He's sick. Please! He raised a hand. Say no more. Beaumont stood, walked over to Liam, and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. You saved my daughter's life. You brought her light back when I couldn't. Whatever your brother needs, it's done. Liam froze. Sir, I can't take that. Beaumont smiled faintly. You already earned it. You gave me my child back. Tears welled in Liam's eyes. He couldn't speak, only nod, his voice caught somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. Ava squeezed his hand. Looks like the world can be kind after all. He laughed through his tears. Maybe it learned from you? That night, as Ava sat at her piano once more, the air in the room seemed lighter. The music she played wasn't for sorrow anymore. It was a hymn of gratitude, a melody that wrapped around everyone who listened. Grace watched from the doorway, her own eyes wet. She's stronger than she's ever been, she whispered. Beaumont nodded. She's her mother's daughter. And as the final note lingered in the air, Liam closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the sound didn't ache. It healed. The next morning, the world outside was drenched in light. Liam walked into the garden to find Ava waiting by the balcony. She was wrapped in a blanket, her hair glimmering like spun gold in the sun. Describe it to me, she said. The morning? Yes, I want to know what hope looks like today, he smiled. It's golden. The kind of gold that doesn't shine, it glows. The air smells clean like the world got a second chance. Ava tilted her face toward the sun. Maybe we all did. They stood there for a long moment. Just breathing in the day, no fear, no ticking clock. Just now. Liam, she said softly, when I get better, I want to see your brother. You will, he promised. And one day I'll build you the world you've been imagining, she smiled. You already have. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like. Not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you. That evening, as the first stars appeared, Ava played one final melody before sleep, a song she called The Color of Morning. It was soft, fragile, full of life, a song that told their story without needing words. Liam sat beside her, his head bowed, and whispered, Thank you for hearing me when no one else did. She smiled faintly. Thank you for painting me a world I can finally live in. The room fell quiet, the notes lingering like a prayer. And somewhere beyond the window, the snow melted into rivers of light. For the first time, they weren't two lost souls clinging to hope. They were hope, living, breathing, forgiving. Weeks passed, and the world slowly began to rebuild itself around them. Ava's strength returned little by little. She could now walk across her room without feeling faint. Her laughter filled the halls again, and the piano no longer sounded like goodbye. It sounded like beginning. Liam visited every day. Some days they painted. Other days they simply sat by the window, her listening, him describing. But lately, Ava had started asking questions that felt heavier. Questions about life, sight, and what beauty really meant. Liam, she said one afternoon, what if I could see? Would everything change? He paused, setting his pencil down. What do you mean? The doctors say there's a chance, she said softly. A new procedure, risky, but it could give me my vision. Liam's breath caught. That's incredible. It is, she agreed. But Father doesn't want me to do it. He says I don't need sight to be happy. Liam frowned. What do you want? She turned toward his voice, her lips trembling into a smile. I want to see the world you've described to me. I want to know if colors really feel the way you made them sound. He swallowed hard. Then you should. No matter the risk. Her fingers reached for his. Would you still stay if I changed? He laughed softly. Ava, sight doesn't change who you are. It just helps you see what's already beautiful. She smiled. That quiet, radiant smile that always felt like sunrise. A week later, Beaumont gave in. The surgery was approved, scheduled, and paid for. The night before, the house was filled with a strange silence, the kind that comes before a miracle. Ava couldn't sleep. Neither could Liam. They sat in her room, the lights dimmed, a single candle flickering between them. "What if it doesn't work?" she whispered. "Then I'll keep describing the world until it feels real," he said softly. "And if it does?" He smiled faintly. "Then you'll finally see how beautiful it already was." She reached across the table, brushing his hand. "You talk like you've seen too much pain." "I have," he said honestly. "But then I met you, and suddenly even pain had color." Her eyes glistened. "Then promise me one thing. Anything. When the world looks too bright, remind me how to find its softness again." He nodded. "Always." They stayed that way, two souls caught between hope and fear, until dawn crept through the curtains. The next morning, as the car waited outside, Ava squeezed his hand one last time before leaving. "When I open my eyes," she whispered, "I want you to be the first thing I see." He smiled through his tears. "Then I'll be right here." The hours dragged on. Snow fell again, light and slow, as if time itself held its breath. Liam waited in the hospital corridor, his heart thundering with every sound that came from beyond those doors. Grace arrived later, carrying a thermos of coffee and the look of someone praying in silence. "She's strong," she said softly. "She'll make it." He nodded, clutching the small pendant Ava had once given him. A silver sun, she said, reminded her of his voice. Finally, the door opened. The surgeon stepped out, his mask lowered, a faint smile on his tired face. "The operation went well," he said. "She's resting. It'll take time before we know if her sight will return fully." Liam exhaled for the first time in hours. He walked into the room slowly, his hands trembling. Ava lay there, pale but peaceful, her eyes bandaged, her breathing steady. He sat beside her, whispering softly, "You did it, Ava. You're almost there." Her lips curved faintly. "Liam, I'm here. Does it look like morning?" He looked out the window and the light spilling across white roofs, painting gold into the snow. "It does," he said. "The kind of morning you'd love." She smiled. "Then promise me you'll tell me about it." "Until I can see it myself." He took her hand gently. "Always." Days passed. Slowly she healed. Every day, Liam described the world as if she could see it already. The nurse's blue scrubs, the orange glow of sunset, the color of his laughter when she teased him. And then, one morning, the doctor came in and said softly, "It's time." Ava sat upright as he carefully unwrapped the bandages. The room was quiet, too quiet, until the last layer fell away. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, everything was light and shadow. And then, color. Tears streamed down her face. "Liam," she gasped. He froze. "Can you—" "I can see." She reached for him, her gaze trembling over his face for the very first time. "You're exactly how I imagined," she whispered. He laughed, a sound half joy, half disbelief. And she joined him, both of them crying and smiling at once. "See?" he said softly. "The world was waiting for you." She nodded through tears. "No." "You were. If you believe love still wins, comment, Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Someone out there needs to remember that miracles still happen. Outside, the snow melted for good that morning. And for the first time in her life, Ava Beaumont saw the color of morning, and it looked exactly like love. The sun was already high when they left the hospital. Ava stepped out slowly, her hand resting on Liam's arm as though the ground might dissolve under her feet. The air was cold, the light dazzling, too much at first. She blinked, letting her eyes adjust. For a girl who had never seen before, every detail was a miracle. The shimmer of snow, the way sunlight caught on window glass, the soft breath of steam leaving a stranger's coffee cup. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Liam smiled. "Told you the world glows." She turned toward him then, really turned, seeing him fully for the first time. His face was gentler than she imagined, his eyes tired but kind. "You look exactly how your voice feels," she said softly. He laughed, his cheeks reddening. "And you look like every sunrise I ever tried to draw." They walked through the city hand in hand, the noise of life swirling around them, car horns, laughter, the distant call of a street vendor. Ava stopped often, just to stare at things Liam had once described. A little girl chasing pigeons, the shimmer of puddles after snow, the color of apples. She touched everything. Walls, leaves, even raindrops sliding down a railing, as if memorizing the world through both sight and feel. You used to say sound was enough, Liam teased gently. It was, she said, smiling. But sight it's the sound of silence made visible. He watched her, a mix of pride and awe filling his chest. She wasn't fragile anymore. She was light itself, alive, radiant. Later, they stopped by a small cafe near the park. Ava stared out the window at the trees, her reflection flickering in the glass. It's strange, she said softly. I imagined the world 1,000 times, and yet it's still kinder than I dreamed. That's because you helped build it, he replied. You saw beauty long before your eyes did. She turned toward him. And you gave it to me. He reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. You gave it back. Ava's father arrived soon after, his face lit with tears he didn't bother hiding. Sweetheart, he said, his voice shaking. Look at you. She stood, stepping into his arms. I can see you, Father. He held her tightly, whispering, I don't deserve this. She smiled into his shoulder. You deserve forgiveness, and I think Mom would want that too. He pulled back, eyes wet. You forgive me? Of course, she said softly. You were scared. So was I. But fear doesn't mean love was gone. It just means we forgot how to show it. Her father nodded, unable to speak, and in that quiet forgiveness became something visible. Not a word, but a light between them. Weeks passed, and spring began to bloom. Ava recovered fully, her eyesight sharper each day. But more than sight, she had found purpose. She began painting, colors spilling from her imagination onto canvas, guided by Liam's old sketches and her own newfound wonder. Her father turned the old music room into a gallery for her work. The first painting she completed was titled The Sound of Rain. When Liam saw it, he froze. It was exactly how he'd once described it to her. Tiny footsteps racing each other down the roof before disappearing. He turned to her, eyes shining. You remembered, she smiled. I remember everything you ever said. From then on, they painted and played side by side, art and melody weaving together, a rhythm of two lives that had once been defined by pain, but were now shaped by love. One evening, as the sun melted into gold, Ava stood at the same balcony where she'd once waited for him. This time, he was beside her. No distance left between their worlds. Do you still believe in miracles? She asked. He nodded slowly. I'm looking at one. She laughed through quiet tears. Then promise me something, Liam. Anything. When you tell this story one day, don't make it about sadness. Make it about what love can fix, he smiled. I will. She leaned her head against his shoulder, the city glowing below them, the air soft with spring. Good, she whispered. Because that's what we are now. Proof that love doesn't have to end in pain. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away. Tap like. Not for me, but for Ava, for Liam, for every soul who's ever loved through darkness and still believed in light. One small click can say, I felt this. The years that followed became the quiet epilogue the world rarely sees. Liam's brother grew strong. Ava's art began to travel, from small cafes to galleries across the city. People would stand before her paintings and say they felt them before they even understood them. And sometimes, when someone asked how she could paint emotions so vividly, she'd smile and say, because once I was blind, and someone taught me how to see. The mansion that had once been filled with silence now echoed with laughter, music, and the steady rhythm of a piano that never again played sorrow.